Now, I've talked a lot about North America, but with our bulletin, we make a point of looking globally. As David said, I just recently spoke in Hong Kong. When I lived in Brazil, I worked with government agencies there in Brazil. And so in all of these, your top left image is the 10-year outlook along with what agriculture has kind of grown in that area. Because once again, agriculture is the first thing that people consider when they're looking at what climate affects. The top, or the right images, the top is temperatures and the bottom is precipitation that you can receive during an El Nino. And the bottom left image is the areas and industries that are also severely affected by climate and weather that aren't always considered when you think about weather in general. One of the big ones in Asia is damming and hydroelectricity. All those river systems, the Yangtze, the Xian, et cetera, so forth, that they have there in China, they're deciding to dam all those rivers up. The reason they're doing this is not only dam them, but also reroute them. And the reason they're doing this is they're trying to move water from a wet south to a dry north China. But the problem is this information was collected and established in the 80s and the 90s. And they're putting into effect now. Oceans have changed. Southern China is actually getting less rainfall. Northern China is actually getting more. So China right now is rerouting water from a dry area to a wet area. And those rivers flow not only through China, they go to India, they go to the Philippines, they go to Thailand, they go to other countries. And so now China is taking away water from those countries as well that are also getting less rainfall. The reason this is important is not only for opportunities in hydroelectricity, but also keeping an eye on the policy. Because if one country is taking a needed commodity like water from other countries, you can imagine how those other countries might eventually react. In Australia, when we have an El Nino in Australia, it usually creates drought throughout the entire country, and it usually creates fire. Now this year it's not happening because of the IOD. IOD is neutral. I won't go into the details, but it means that Australia does get a little bit of rainfall and precipitation. Not a lot, but enough. The interesting thing with Australia to watch, though, is that Australia has a very small community in general, and they have an even smaller agricultural community. So Australia is the boy that cries wolf a lot when it comes to El Ninos or La Ninas. While most scientists, you'll see, 10%, 15% think there may be an El Nino, Australia is 80% sure that it's going to happen. And one of the reasons for this is because if they warn their farming community ahead of time, it's such a small group of people that they can actually change their planting, their growing, or whatever they need to change to make sure that they can handle the upcoming drought more quickly and more efficiently than any other country. So I showed you that food index and how it jumps up and down because of El Ninos and La Ninas. In Australia, if you look at just the Australian food index, the output, the yields, may go up a little, may go down a little. It stays relatively the same, not a whole lot of dramatic impact. And that is because they can change more efficiently than anyone else. So if you start seeing Australia making some changes and you can notice this in their reports, they'll suddenly drop the yield that they're anticipating. One of the reasons for that is they're believing before anybody else that there may be a weather phenomenon that's going to affect that. Obviously, we talked about North America. This is your 10-year outlook, your temperatures and your rainfall, and other industries that are heavily affected. We talked quite a bit about insurance. We talked about agriculture, also migration. The areas where we have been getting a lot of the immigrants that have been coming in recently, it hasn't been from Mexico like it was in the 70s through the 90s. It's been from Honduras. It's been from more Central American countries. Those are the areas that have severe drought. So they've migrated into Mexico, and Mexico already has established a huge network of how to get people into the United States. They're more than happy to pass that information along for a price to the immigrants coming in through Central America. So once again, climate has affected the type of immigrants and the location that our immigrants currently have been coming from, at least in the southern part of the United States. In Europe, one thing to keep a very close eye on with Europe, when we talk about environmental policies, about man-made global warming and climate and anything else, something I tell our clients is it doesn't matter what I believe is true or not, or for that matter, what you believe is true or not. It matters what the policymakers believe. Because they're the ones that make the rules and the regulations that impact your bottom line. And just ask people who did any coal refining what their bottom line was like when Obama decided that that was an area that he felt needed environmental laws put into place. Same with California. The reason I bring this up is Europe believes that man's influence on global warming is very strong. They believe it more than just about any other continent as a whole. And Europe just had a very dramatic drought. And in general, we as people, we don't like things that we can't control, and you can't control the weather. That's something I love about what I do. Markets can be changed and altered and manipulated by people all the time, but no man, no woman can make a hurricane not happen. So because of this, Europe is already saying that most of this drought is not coming from the eruption of Ardabunga or the oscillation of the Atlantic. They're saying it's coming from man's impact and man-made global warming. So they're more than likely over this next year going to start implementing environmental policy to change and to put into effect more penalties or fees or taxation on what they believe to be bad businesses, bad industries, or bad action that creates it. And North America, Asia to some extent, and South America to a lesser, but still some extent, oftentimes will follow the practices that Europe starts. South America. South America is in desperate need for water regulation and for water storage. They're getting good water, but in areas like Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, they are getting rain flooding their streets, but they're turning on their faucets and sometimes they're not getting water, and they're getting rolling brownouts. And that's in the areas that are expensive. We're not talking about the favelas, the ghetto areas, that don't have running water, that don't have sewage or electricity. So they're struggling even more. This is coming at a time, though, that we have the Summer Olympics coming. So looking at South America, with the likelihood that the policymakers are going to invest in which? Water preservation or water basins or collecting water, or making sure that hotels and roads look pretty for the international guests that are coming to visit for the Olympics. Much like the World Cup, anticipate civil unrest to occur in South America, especially in Brazil, because other areas in South America are also not getting as good of rainfall, such as Argentina, parts of Chile, Colombia, Peru, etc., so forth. Central America, we're talked about the migration, it's also affecting tourism. Because of because you don't have a lot of rainfall in North America, you don't have people looking at the beautiful sunny beaches of the Caribbean and going, I really want to be there. They're looking out of their own house and going, well, it hasn't rained in 3 weeks, I really don't need more sun. So their tourism, even though they're getting more people coming in, their tourism has been dropping as far as profit, because they've been having to charge lower pays and more, weekend specials and buy one, get one frees and things like that. And the people coming in are not spending as much money as they used to. And finally, in Africa. Africa has the youngest population generally of any continent. You have a huge amount of young people, and you have a major shift in the weather patterns, because North Africa in the 90s and early 2000s got good and plentiful rainfall. In 2005, when the PDO changed, and also from the Atlantic changing, suddenly they haven't been getting it. And if you think about Africa, where have a lot of the major civil unrest cases occurred recently? It's been in North Africa. Meanwhile, they're getting better rainfall in the west and in the south. And those are areas that are actually starting to do better. Those are areas that are starting to get more precipitation, create more agriculture and growth. There is some problem, though, because a lot of those areas are flooding. The one thing to keep in mind is good precipitation, especially right now, doesn't always mean that it's great. It could mean that you're getting flooding. It could mean that you're getting a lot of rainfall, but over a short amount of time. Once again, it comes into play of what areas, what regions best use the water that they have, through storage, through irrigation, through collection.